Right then, welcome everyone to the third Inclusive Inner Wellness webinar delivered by Suhail Mirza. And assuming a lot of you have done webinar 1 and 2, but if you haven't and you join us for the first time today, then welcome, and you can also catch up on webinar 1 and 2 via the YouTube channel, which no doubt Alex will be here. There you go, she's sent them in the chat already. Alex has shared the recording links with you, and they'll also be included in the follow-up email as well, so you can go back and watch them. And even if you did attend, then you know they're resources that you can go and watch to remind yourselves of what we covered and what we went through. So this is the third of 3, and without further ado, I'll hand over to Suhail.
Thanks, Rebecca. Welcome back, everybody. I had a chat with a few of you as we were waiting, and as Rebecca says, this is the third of the 3. And if we go back to what the goals were, it's quite simple, not easy, but simple, helping us to get more of the emotions that we want to experience the most, fewer instances of the emotions that we don't want. And if we've got that voice in our head, it sometimes can be a source of super criticality. We want to quieten that down as much as we can. If we go to the next slide, Rebecca, it's something that I've been doing a lot of discussion around wellness for people in NHS social care. It's in the press now, and I think we realize that actually if we can take simple steps while we wait for big changes to take place, that's an important thing that we can all do individually. It's a message that came out working with doctors and NHS leaders and integrated care system leaders that you see there. Now, last time, I just want to introduce what we went through last time. We talked about the imperatives that drive emotions, and I left at the end of the webinar a few questions hanging in the air. So if we go to the next slide, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to think further around this. It's not a test. You don't have to pass or fail. What do we mean by success? What do we mean by fulfillment? Have a think about that. Which emotions do you want to experience the most? Which ones do you want to have less often? Anyone want to share a couple of things? Rebecca, Alex, emotions that you want to have more of or less of, just to get a feel places. Stella has raised her hand, or is that a question?
No, I've raised my hand just to share my thoughts.
Stella.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't put my camera on because I'm down with a cold, so I'm joining you while I'm on my bed.
No problem. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, just thinking about the emotions I'd like to experience most is fulfillment. When you do something, you want to ensure that you're fulfilled, you've carried it out to the best of your ability, and there is success at the end of it. The emotions which I'd like to experience more often are the ones that, you know, you're appraised, you are appreciated when you're at work.
Yep.
You're carrying out your duties to a professional standard. The ones which I would like less to experience are the negative ones. Sometimes the service users we use we would give you, you know, they would react negatively to you, especially when you have just they're meeting you for the first time. So
Yep.
there is that unfamiliarity, and then you know, you take a step back and you try to rethink, how can I approach this again to achieve the task that is before me.
Great.
How I define success is fulfillment, as I said in the beginning.
That's what Peter's confirmed that as well. He's written under footnote there. So thank you for that. That's how we're defining. Thank you so much, Stella. It's an invitation just for people to think that in their head, because we're going to come back and have a look at this during this session today. If we go to the next slide, thank you all for putting that. We've got quite a lot to cover today. We're going to look at the rules behind those emotions that we want to experience the most of. How do we actually know that we're going to feel that? What have we set up in our mind, and can we make them actually work to our favor a little bit more? We're going to look at emotions themselves, and in the large majority of cases, how they're created. Are they things that just magically appear? Do we have a lot more sovereignty over them? going to have a look at that. And obviously at the end, we're going to just have a quick recap on some of the steps that we've covered so that hopefully we can walk away here and implement. So quick reminder first in this section, if we just go to the next slide, in terms of the approach, inclusive inner wellness, it's very much the idea that we're going to draw on all the world's traditions, evidence back, and lead with the heart. We have to obviously be aware of our mind and our rational thoughts, of course, but very much in the heart. And Rupert Sheldrake, I think we've confirmed the idea of spiritual practices, which were a little bit to the side, perhaps only a generation ago, revolutionized our understanding of what it is in terms of flourishing, happiness, the science of happiness, and multicultural psychology. I put that all together on the next slide into the wisdom model that we walk through everybody over a period of time, and we've touched upon some of those, and we're going to do some more of those segments today. Rebecca, if we could go to the next slide. We talked about this last time, and I think we did it and really welcome people the input last time. According to human needs psychology, those first 4 imperatives, I like to call them, drive our behavior. We fulfill those all the time. And if we truly want a flourishing, fulfilling life, it's the last 3 that we've also got to fulfill. And we remembered, I think, that usually 2 are the most important for people. Maybe it'll be a few minutes just to remind ourselves of that. You're welcome to write things in the chat or speak. For me, I think I said love was the most important imperative for me. That's the value I wanted most. Secondly, followed by certainty. Those are the 2 things that drive a lot of my behavior and emotions. Reminder from others, if you want to share, by all means, do so. I think, Alex, I can't remember what you wrote down, but I think it was, you're on mute.
I'm just revisiting these, and I think, yeah, love, definitely, and then probably meaning and purpose. But if I can be cheeky, a bit of certainty in there as well would help.
I think we all need a bit of certainty in these times. Question there from Rebecca, can these change over time? Do they tend to remain the same? It's a great question. And broadly speaking, they do change. If you look at the top 4, sometimes it's a function of where we are in that stage of our life. You know, we maybe have children, we may have a particular career aspiration, there may be external things. So, and there's no right or wrong answer. That's the important thing to remember. Whatever for us is most important, we have to honor that. And actually our co-workers that we're working with, if somebody values certainty above all else, we don't need to work out the reasons why that is. That could be something way back in the past. And another individual values novelty. Do you think that they would approach life in very different ways? And what about if we're instituting a change program, or we're dealing with change in a work environment? How would those 2 individuals react to that? Quite differently. So I think it's something about honoring the individuals, let them be who they are, and 2, adapting so that we can support their well-being, because someone who values certainty above all else will find that very, very overwhelming. And I think it does change over time, and there is no right answer. So that's the important thing. Now, we also talked last time about the vehicles. How do we find love? How do we find certainty? How do we find meaning and purpose? Alex, you said that's a big one for you. The drivers are the same, but we use different vehicles. We can use positive vehicles that help us, contributing to other people, driving our career, for example, or we can keep other people down. What vehicles are you using to get the emotions that you value the most? It's worth thinking about that on a regular basis. Right, let's just delve into a couple of these. I think it'd be quite interesting to get people's views. So my drivers for variety, novelty, uncertainty. There's many of them, but you can click them all actually, Rebecca. They comprise travel, music, and reading. These things I can do whenever I can. Travel can be local, it can be distance. I've said Andalusia because it's my favorite part of Europe. I listen to music frequently. Some of it might be a bit outdated for some people today, and I do read a lot. It's not virtual in the background. So this is where I go to just to get a sense of connection, but really a variety, different experiences, different thoughts, different people, different cultures, change in my emotions, sometimes to cry, sometimes to be elated. If we go to the next slide, it'd be intriguing. What do people do to meet the need for uncertainty or novelty? Peter, I'm not going to speak for you, but travel must be one for you. Sorry, can't you're on mute. Oh, you're still on mute, unfortunately. Yeah, you weren't on mute earlier. See if you get. We'll see if you get a chance to come off mute. We haven't put mute on for everybody, have we, Alex? I mean, people can just come back on, can't they?
People should be able to come
Okay.
back.
So, what vehicles do you use to meet the need for that? Rebecca, Alex, anyone else wants to share to find variety and difference? Eating out, other things, just be intriguing.
For me, the big one's making plans. So
Mhm.
that might be as simple as making dinner plans on a Friday evening, or making bigger plans to take a trip somewhere on the weekend, or a holiday. I really feel like I always need to have something there to
Yep.
kind of work towards and look forward to.
Yeah, and that gives a sense of anticipation, excitement, and that's an emotional response. That's how that need is being fulfilled. Stella, sorry you put your hand up. I've just seen the note. The apologies should have come to you earlier.
I didn't. That's okay. And my vehicles for this, I like to walk, and I like to walk along the canal and in nature. For me, that is my go-to. And then I like some quiet time
Yep.
as well. So I retreat a lot and have some quiet time.
And is that done on a daily basis, or you do that whenever the desire comes in your heart? It's not part of it.
About 3 years ago, I walked 12 kilometers every day.
Wow.
And then I reduced it to 4 days a week, just because I'm juggling studying and work. So depending if I'm going to uni in early morning, then I can't walk. I prefer to walk first thing in the morning. So.
Yeah, a brilliant suggestion. 12 kilometers is amazing. We've got Linda talking about self-reflection time in terms of meeting this need. Sarah, art, of course, which is obviously can inspire us just in those moments when perhaps sometimes we're overwhelmed, or just as a go-to. So the key here is to try to see if we can put a few of these practices in on a daily basis. They don't have to be overwhelming. They can just fit in and help meet our needs. Giving myself plenty of time to myself, Judith has talked about. Absolutely. I think that a sense of self-love and self-care is extremely important. Right. Let's now talk about another one of the imperatives, and that's contribution. We talked about the self in the 4 basic imperatives, but the 3 that actually drive a sense of fulfillment is when we contribute to other people, serve other people, we develop, we have a sense of meaning and purpose that Alex talked about. Now, contribution, what do I do? My daily ritual helps me to actually connect to the better part of me, the deeper part of me, so I can draw on that to help contribute to other people. I have causes. I'm a big animal lover. I must change that picture. Unfortunately, Bobby, who is there, suddenly tragically passed away only relatively recently. So animals are a big thing, and causes to support animals. And the other practice I like to do is to drop a note, nothing on a formula basis, just when my heart tells me to drop a note, a text, a voicemail, a phone call, people that I care about, the family, friends, people I work with, just to appreciate them. Have you ever received a note out of the blue from somebody, a call? How has it made you feel? Sometimes we don't even want to send that note if we're not in a great place. Sometimes the voice in the head says, oh, maybe they don't want to hear from us. And that's the time to actually, when you contribute, it can make a huge difference to your own self-esteem. So thinking about that, if we go to the next slide, that vehicle of contribution and service. Now, obviously the work you do does that a lot for many of us here. But again, intriguing. How do we contribute or serve others? What do we do? Any of us. Leave the floor open. Anyone can raise hand. Be intrigued to see what that works. Alex, Rebecca, again, you're presenting with me, but be great to hear from you and others.
I think they, as you were saying about showing that appreciation, so really, telling people when they've really made a difference and impact on your life, I think is really important, and perhaps isn't done as much as it should be. We all, I'm sure, have felt when someone's said something that's really stuck with us for potentially years, and actually then telling that person the impact that they've had on your life or my life. I think that for me is something that I really try and do.
Yeah. Valuing others, Linda's sharing that, and that can be presumably through notes or speaking to them. positive feedback, Peter. Absolutely. Showing appreciation, Ade. And I just want to mention here is that sometimes we don't realize because how important that is to somebody. We're going to come on to rules in a minute. Now, some people absolutely crave this on a really tremendous basis. Are they wrong for that? I don't think so. That is them, as in other people can be fine. Speak to them once a month and, oh, that's fine. I'm okay. Both people are right. So when you give that small note of appreciation or give someone a hug or a smile, a stranger as a smile, you have no idea what that might mean for that individual. I say that from personal experience. I've had really challenging times where someone has just done a simple act and it's been hugely invaluable. Just a personal story that's happened since the last webinar, that all the long story in the background. I recently met up with an uncle of mine, who's my late father's brother, and for various family reasons, there had been an impasse, and we hadn't seen each other in decades. And I found him, I met him, and I was driven because I wanted to meet him, to thank him. When I was a child, he did some really good things for us. And he broke down in tears, and he's a successful person doing his own life. And it just meant something to him. I think we can do that on a daily basis. I think Eli or Ellie, I think if I've got the right pronunciation, appreciation goes a long way and makes all the difference. So simple act. And how do you feel when you have changed that person's state? Amazing difference. Okay. Simple acts, regular basis. Okay. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to tarry here for a while. We've talked all the way through these webinars about the idea that it's our emotional life, the things we're feeling right now, the voice that's going on in our head. This is the quality of our day-to-day life. And what are emotions? How can we make them work for us? How do they work? I've listed here some empowering emotions that we should engage in. Anyone have some of those emotions that really resonate with them, or any comments around those? I put this is a variety from feedback over a dozen webinars of what people want, and I've added some of my own there. Any comments around any of these? How about Stella? Yeah.
It is possible to experience these emotions depending on the situation that is at hand. So if you find somebody wanting help or just wanting a listening ear, you show compassion.
Yes.
You show joy when you're fulfilled about a task. There's pride when you've been praised. Sorrow when somebody you're caring for suddenly passes away. Despite not knowing them that much, but there is that bond, a human bond. So a lot of these emotions you have put, they can be experienced at different times in life.
Absolutely. I'm glad you touched upon sorrow there. I've included in these a variety of emotions that sometimes I haven't used the word positive. I use the word empowering quite deliberately. So anger, indignation, for example, are emotions that we have to honor when they come. We have to try to understand why we feel them. And actually, they have their place. If you look at emotions as a call to action and being authentic, rather than self-chastising ourselves, if we do feel angry, too long in a state of anger might be challenging. But without anger or indignation, we wouldn't have had the civil rights movement in the United States in the 60s that led to massive changes in electoral practice and fair treatment. We wouldn't have had the Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement. So I think the key thing to bear in mind here is that emotions, whatever they come, let us honor them and not put them in boxes. That's positive, that's negative. I think, Stella, you said it very beautifully, talking about sorrow, because that has a place in our lives, particularly when we're doing the work that we're talking about here. I'd like to do an experiment, if I may. Can everyone see everyone else on the screen, or is it only I can see? Only I can see the person. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to ask, if I may, I'm going to ask I can see Alex, so I'm going to ask Alex, and I'm going to just bear with me on this. And you can do it yourself if you can, if you want to. Sarah or Linda, Peter, Alexander, go ahead if you want to do this. And I just want, but I'm going to focus on Alex, and I'll invite everyone to do this just for a couple of minutes. If you close your eyes and just think of something that's happened relatively recently, or even in the last year, that annoyed you, upset you. Nothing too traumatic, we don't want to go there, but something that annoyed you, made you angry. Have a think about that. Try to go back to the place where that took place. Who was there? Can you see that individual or that circumstance? Try to feel how you felt when this incident took place and how it upset you or made you angry. Think about that. Are you there? Can you feel it? Okay. Now, please, can you think of something that made you laugh? Might have been an excerpt from a film, maybe some friend who came in and gave you a surprise, something that made you joyful. The beach in Goa comes to mind for at least one individual here. Can we go back? Can you think of something that made you happy, made you laugh, made you feel a sense of awe? Whatever you're thinking of, Alexander, I'd love to know what it is, because you've got like this broad smile on your face, which looks amazing. Linda's got that too. Right, thank you, everybody, for that. It's just a short experiment. And what was interesting for me, did you sense a change in your body, your face, when you focused on something, from the sad thing to the happy or more joyful thing? Did you feel that in your body? Right. Who made the change? Who did it? You did, right. Alexander's pointing to himself. You made that change. And may I ask, how quickly did you change? 2 hours, 5 days, 6 months, 2 minutes, instantly, right? So what was interesting, I watched your faces. Alexander's still got a big smile on his face. And what happened in that change? Peter, the same, because obviously we know that he was at Goa, so it was easy for me to mention that. It's interesting that you can switch. Alexander, sorry, you're raising your hand.
Yes, I actually talked about, I thought about something that was really, really very tragic, and something each time I try to like think about it, I make a conscious effort to like get it off my mind, because it was really sad. And I try to do it, and I just juxtapose it with something that made me happy. And I realized I could actually do away with the pain. And that was why I smiled. Why have I been torturing myself, going through these thoughts, when I could just immediately think about something that makes me happy, and I can get rid of the thought. So I don't have to carry the burden, you know.
Absolutely. That's the end of the webinar. There you go. You've got it. You won, right? You're 100% right. Now, there are, of course, emotions that are caused by many other medical reasons, which are going to require other intervention. We know this. But in terms of our habitual thoughts, and Alexander, thank you for sharing that, by the way, that you dealt with, you were sharing something tragic that really was sad, and you were able to switch. And what it shows us is actually, in the vast majority of cases, we have far more sovereignty over our emotions. Mudassir, I'll just come to you in 1 second, if I may. I know that you got your hand up. To go to Alexander's point, if we go to the next slide, Rebecca, what happened was our emotions, in the vast majority of cases, are a mixture of these three elements. What you focus on, the picture in your mind, as Alexander, that tragic moment, there was probably language going on in your head, thoughts, feelings which made you feel sad or made you happy, and that affected your body. So these three things interact to give us the emotions. Now, many of us have got emotions that have been wired in because it's been habitual, and it's quite difficult to change. But over time, if we keep juxtaposing, to use your word, you can see how quickly that can change. And our physiology, if you stand, if you walk, if you smile, very, very hard to feel disempowering emotions. Does that mean if we're facing challenges that they're going to be somehow not go away? No, but it gives us the state that we want to actually be able to meet those challenges. So thank you for sharing that. Mudassiru, I think you had your hand up to come back to you. Apologies. I just wanted to make that point that Alexandra had made it. I think we had a hand up.
Afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, there's naturally there are a lot of things you can actually think of that really makes you very sad, or probably something that you can actually just do away with just because of what such things actually cost you in your life over time. But because of the first webinar we did all the time, when you were telling us about we should be able to forget about things that really hurt our minds. We should learn to really forgive those that are actually done bad to us. For us to actually have a better life, and for us to really think positive about ourselves, irrespective of the situation that we will find ourselves. Presently, I'm actually going through a whole lot. That is why I'm always trying as much as possible to meet up with a webinar, because like what I think what Stella was saying the other time, she goes for work and everything. I think when there's a lot of problem you're facing, I think there are some a physical aspect of your life that is actually going to take away from you. Like somebody that doesn't have a job now, you just indoor, you don't go out. It's going to be very difficult for you to take some physical trainings about yourself to make yourself very healthy. Once you are depressed, you don't have a job, to actually go for walk, to talk to people could be very difficult. But
Yeah.
once you even think, but from the webinar we did, first and second webinar we did, is that you told us that there's no matter of problem you're having. That's one little things that could make you happy. There are things you think about what God has done for you, what you're grateful for, that's actually going to make you happy, because problem does not go away. And as some problems, you can't just forget about it, but you just have to think about what are the positive things that are actually working in your life, that you can actually concentrate on that. And I think from that, you can actually live, a better life for yourself, trying to encourage yourself and thinking about the positive aspect of your life. I think that is going to go a great deal, and it's going to work out fine in one's life. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mudassiru. That's very inspiring, and you're absolutely right. And we have to honor emotions when we're feeling sad and challenged. They're real, they're true. We're not going to discard them, but we can react to them, as you say, in a way by highlighting those things where, in your words, God has blessed us. If you're a believer, and all the things we can be grateful for. Stella, just notice you had your hands up before we move to the next point.
Yes, I did. I just wanted to add on to the emotion of grief, and especially when it comes so successive with each other. It is hard to remove yourself from that place of bereavement, and it takes time.
Yeah.
When you when you encounter places you did with this person, things they said, a picture they had, it will still conjure that sorrowful or sadness or anger in you. So grief, I think, is one emotion that would take a long time to overcome. As opposed to, you're angry this minute, then you go away and cool off, and then you're fine.
No, absolutely. And if we click to the next point, Rebecca, just to honor that statement, Stella, thank you for sharing that. We have to look at the higher intent behind every emotion. Grief is something that is actually, in a way, is honoring the beauty of the love or the connection that you had with that individual or animal that has passed. So I think honoring that and not trying to quickly overcome it, it's in a simple way. You're quite right, Stella. It's about honoring every emotion, but in the everyday, as we talked about Alexander, you can switch those habitual things that sometimes, to use your phrase, Alexander, we torture ourselves. They come back as a habit, but we can now flip it. And I want to go on to the next slide to just share a couple of little exercises, if I may. And again, I'll invite you to close your eyes for some of those, if I can see some of you, but not all of you. And just for a few minutes, if you don't mind, we're going to just do a couple of little exercises, take a minute or two. So if we click to the first point, please think of a beautiful place, item or object, something that has meaning to you, that makes you feel a sense of awe or connection or joy, a memory. goer I know will be flooding your mind, Peter. It's flooding mine, and I went there 20 years ago. But let's just spend a minute or two just thinking about a beautiful place or item or object that has moved you or has meant something to you in your life. For me, it's I was fortunate enough to go to Jerusalem in April, and seeing the birthplace of Christ was extraordinarily moving. It moved to tears with the pilgrims that were there. That's just come to my mind now as I'm thinking. So have a think about that. Okay, going to move to the next one, please, Rebecca. Please think of an animal that brings you joy or love, or it can be a pet, could be something you see on TV. Have a picture of that animal. How do you feel? What does that bring as an emotion? My favorite animal, don't ask me why, is a sloth. And I absolutely love sloths. And I can think of them, and I've seen them, and they just make me, they just melt my heart. I think they're amazing. So any animal that has a meaning to you, have a think about them. And finally, think of a beautiful person. Could be, you could think about yourself, I suppose, but you could think about someone that you know, maybe someone in the, in the wider culture, someone who's beautiful inside and out, whatever your meaning for that is. Have a think about who that may. Again, I'd love to get into Alexander's head, because he's got a smile that's going from ear to ear. You don't have to tell us that, that's fine. And you don't have to share, but that's a fabulous smile there. Okay, just a very short exercise. I wanted to just share them with you, and they're called glimpse exercises deliberately. It's a follow-up from what we just did in terms of switching, but I saw people's faces light up. You could see the physical. I'm not in the room with you. It doesn't take us a huge amount of effort if we just find a minute or two now and then in a busy day. Stella's talked about walking. You can do this while you're walking, sitting, just to breathe and think of beauty, something that moves your heart throughout each day. Doesn't matter what it is. And that will help us to build more of the emotions that we want. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to now going on to these questions that I started at the beginning. And I'm just going to ask Rebecca to put these two questions up. We're going to be looking at the rules. We don't have to answer this, but I'd just like you to think. Thank you, Ade. Just got your comment there. For some people, success is really, really important. We don't have to understand why, but that is. And they may use improving their professionalism and qualifications at work to get that success. For others, it's love, and for them, it could be finding their soulmate or a partner or a friend, love and friendship, whatever it might be. Those are the vehicles. We talked about the imperatives and the vehicles. But how will we know when we're loved? How will we know when we're successful? How do you know? I'm not going to ask anyone to ask that question right now. For me, I'll just briefly on the love points. That's my number one value. It was for others. I need to hear someone tell me, hear the words. One of my rules is I need that. People can buy any presents they want or do whatever else they want to do. If I don't hear those words sincerely, I don't feel it. That's one of the rules I have. Is that good? Is that bad? We need to think about that. What I'd like to do is delve behind this a little bit. If we go to the next slide. And this, don't click anything yet. This is a real life example, obviously on an anonymized basis, of an individual working in the healthcare sector, very, very successful in their field, and done 20 years of experience. And I was asked to work with this individual because despite this success, that person had, in this new role, run into a major problem and had indulged in habits that were very challenging, both for his colleagues and for family. When we asked why, we got behind it. Their number one imperative was success, because we didn't need to know the because, but I'll tell you, that individual had come from an environment growing up where everyone around them had said they would never amount to anything. Literally, lots of things, and including teachers. And so they were absolutely driven for success. And unfortunately, they felt like a failure most of the time. That was their word, not my word. And that had led to the behaviors. So I asked them the question I've asked just a minute ago. Success is so important for you. Brilliant. I'm not here to judge that. That's your top goal. Absolutely, we honor that. We have to honor the individual. How will you know when you're successful? The thing that you've been striving so hard for. And they shared some rules. They would be a success when. If we can share those, Rebecca, please. So I don't know if you can read those. Hopefully you can. And just be interested to see, why would somebody on all objective criteria, as we would see this person clearly successful, why would they feel a failure when they have those rules to determine when they feel successful? Any comments about those rules?
I feel like there's so many question marks over them. So, and they're not all within our own power to control. You know, like the securing the promotion to lead their team, they can do absolutely everything. But if there's not the opportunity there, they can't necessarily achieve that goal. So,
yep. So it's the control aspect. I think we can't control all of those things. That's important. What about the tense? Where are these goals or these rules? Where are they in terms of a timeline? Past, present, or future? So they're all in the future. So this is great. I think as a set of goals, amazing, inspiring, that drives that individual. The problem is they're telling their brain, I will, so I'm not, I will be a success when A, B, C, D. So at that point in the future, now I don't know the person's circumstances, but paying off a mortgage usually takes a reasonable amount of time. Getting a marathon completed, you could probably do that if you really train hard, I suppose. You can't do it next week unless you've got baseline of fit. They're all in the future. And therefore they're saying to their brain, until that time, I am not a success. Well, in fact, they really are, but their brain is telling them they're not. And that's the voice they have in their head all the time, because it's probably a reflection of all the things that they heard when they were growing up. So we had a jig around. Yes, Judith, you're right. Yes, Judith, Ade, Peter, Stella, they're all in the future. So we played around with the rules a little bit and said, right, look, how can we make success, look at it a bit differently? What else could we view it as? And we came up with the following. If you click the next point and see what the difference is here. And you'll notice I am a success when I've helped every single one of those, to your point, Alex, every single one of those, are they within that individual's control or someone else's?
The individuals.
Yep, they can determine that completely. The outcome they can't determine. Are their colleagues going to appreciate their help? Is the studying going to lead to a distinction or not? I don't know. That comes later. But they can devote time to studying every day. They can devote time to eating well. So that shift, and I'm delighted to say that this individual did a great amount of work, and some of the behaviors and challenges that it took time were a thing of the past. And it made a huge difference because the voice in the head began to say, I am a success now. And that made a tremendous difference. So to you, I don't ask for anyone to share their values in here particularly. When will you feel loved or successful? What needs to feel certainty? What happens? I work with it was actually a group of people, one individual in particular. They put certainty as their number one value for various reasons which are not important, but they took to the point where they would not take any risks at all. They wouldn't almost leave the house, wouldn't change any roles, wouldn't apply for anything. And then they became very disillusioned because too much certainty leads to a sense of mundanity. It wouldn't take any risks at all. So the rules were, I'm certain when I've given up my best effort is different from I'm certain where I don't fail in anything. So I'd invite you to think that through. What rules, how could you define to get more of the emotions that you truly want the most of? Now let's flip it around the other way. I'm just going to do that because we've got time to do this. What are the emotions you don't want to feel? We've heard from Stella in terms of getting that appreciation and not being warmly welcome. Anyone here feel a failure ever in their lives at any point? Had that feeling more than once? Anyone? Cassandra raised a hand. Is that with a question or to raise a hand to this question?
I raised the hand by mistake, sorry.
Oh, no, that's great. Thanks, Cassandra.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Delano's raised a hand. Is that in response to the question, or did you have a...
That was response to the question, sir.
Thank you, Delano. So anyone who's felt not enough, however you want to define that, in a relationship, in work, in friendship, right? Occasionally, more than once, definitely. Okay? So these emotions, not feeling loved or not feeling enough or feeling a failure, are the ones that usually are the people, or rejection is another one. People want to do anything to avoid because it's extremely painful. What can we do to make the rules work in our favor here? Well, it's the other way, because many of us make these emotions really easy to achieve. If I don't deliver the project on time, I'm a failure. If I don't look like this, I'm a failure. We'll make it super easy. So I would invite you to think about making the rules much harder to feel that way. So I'll give you an example. It'll be interesting to see what other people have done around this, or comments I'd welcome. So feeling a failure was something that was ingrained in me for a long time in my working life. And I know why it happened. 2 or 3 instances I managed to retrieve why that happened. When you have any situation where you have extreme emotion, and particularly if it's a negative one, it can get hardwired. So when that same instance returns, anything new I was asked to do, even though I did many things, I was a lawyer, etc., but anything new, I used to have that fear because I had crashed and burned on a couple of things when I was much younger. And it became very sapping in terms of energy. I still did the things, but it's very draining, because I was always saying, my brain was saying, you're going to fail, you're going to get found out, you're not going to get this on time, you're going to get this wrong, someone's going to quit, blah, 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 all this stuff. So I redefined failure not as not delivering a project which was 100% brilliant and everyone thought it was the most amazing thing that anyone ever thought of in their entire life, or words to that effect, which is very hard to always fulfill. I made failure contingent on 2 things. So this could apply to whether you want to do a marathon, applies to whether you want to get a qualification. 2 things. 1, I would accept and call myself a failure if I didn't try at all. I didn't make any effort whatsoever. In the vast majority of cases, we tend to make some effort. We might not get the result, but we're probably going to have attempted it. Second condition, remember, it has to be both conditions to feel failure, that I learned nothing from the experience. If I learned nothing and I didn't try, I'll take that as a failure. I'll put my hands up in that instance, not as a failure as a person generally, but in that instance. Now, they're really, really hard conditions to fulfill, because anyone not delivered a project on time, not had the outcome in a relationship or a project before in their lives, did you learn anything from that experience? So if you've learned something, it's not a failure. I know the cliche, it's called a learning experience, but it really is, if we think about it. So I'd invite, again, when you think of the emotions you want to avoid, think about some rules to make it really hard to feel those emotions. Converse to this instance. Does that make sense? Rebecca, Alex, you were nodding your head in terms of these experiences. Just, it's something that's not complicated, but it's not easy to do. We need to think about it.
I think
So
I used to,
essentially,
you go, Rebecca.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, so essentially make the rules easier when we are wanting to feel like a success, and make the rules much, much, much harder that will indicate that we're a failure.
Yes, if those are the emotions you want to avoid completely, then do that. Make those rules much harder, because we do make the rules really easy because we feel that too often. And what you want, whether it's success or love or significance, connection, make that rule as easy as possible. So to feel love, for example, the rule is that if I've given love, as long as I've given love, I don't require it back. I want to give it unconditionally, not stupidly, but unconditionally. I can control that. I can't control what the other person's doing. So for me, that works. Whatever, it doesn't always work out in that life, but it's an example, because I can control that as long as I've learned something and I'm giving that. So bear that in mind. It's an ongoing exercise. I hope that part has been useful for anybody. Any comments? If anybody wants to comment, you're more than welcome. We're here. Just going to wrap up now. We've got 10 minutes to go, and I want to leave some Q&A for the end. Bringing all this together, we've covered the imperatives, we've covered the rules, we've covered emotions. Quite a lot today, and we've got it recorded. Hopefully you'll have a chance to watch it again. And we do have, at the end, you'll have a connection to the modules that we've created, which take us through those steps, and some of these steps which I'm highlighting here. But the shortcut, if you want to call it a shortcut, to get that emotional balance, or the emotions we want more of, is the daily success ritual, which we started way back in webinar 1. Those 5 steps, 3 minutes each, have been the quickest route to get the emotions we want, and that then allows some of the harder work, which in terms of defining the imperatives and our rules, to work. They all work, they're all important, but that daily success ritual, just to be reminded, is the 3 minutes on gratitude and contemplation, forgiveness on a daily basis, visualization, and also having those magic moments, 3 minutes listening to a song or art, whatever it might be. Make that part of your daily schedule. If you click to the next slide, that should just come up there. Start slowly, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and build up over time. The goal here is to make sure it can be slotted into a very busy life. We all want to go on retreats and be able to go somewhere. That would be amazing. But on a regular basis, not all of us can access that. But we can find a few minutes over time, and you'll see the difference. It made a huge difference to me. And I said right at the beginning of these webinars that I would share things that were experientially backed, they had worked, and B, that I would always tell you the truth. And these steps have been the biggest difference to people that I've worked with. So I think we've got a few minutes left. I wanted to do that deliberately because we're at the end of the journey on these 3 webinars, Rebecca and Alex. If we click to the next slide, it'll just do a reminder of the wisdom model, which we haven't covered everything, but we've covered some of the core principles. And finally, I think it's a contact email that we've got for me on the next slide. More than happy to answer any questions that come up that you have on any of the material over the course of the 3 webinars. But it's been a pleasure to have your time and some of the great questions and insights from attendees. It's enriching for me. So thank you very much, and obviously open to any questions from anybody if they wish to do so.